Lady Jessica is one of the most influential and powerful characters in the world of Dune. She usually remains in the shadows of her children and grandson, but in reality, Jessica was not much inferior to them. Jessica had a unique background. She underwent the most rigorous training in the Bene Gesserit and was one of the best in the Order. She managed to survive the harsh deserts of Arrakis, endure numerous assassination attempts, and wasn't afraid to oppose even her all-powerful son. Moreover, it was she who played a decisive role in Paul's success. Without her influence on the Fremen society, it would have been much harder for him to unite them and lead them. And considering where this eventually led, it is Jessica who bears the blame for her son's subsequent atrocities. In this video, I suggest examining Lady Jessica's story, from her rise to her downfall and the end of her life. Jessica was born as a result of the Bene Gesserit genetic program. Her biological mother was Gaius Helen Mohiam herself, who forced the young Baron Vladimir Harkonnen to conceive a child with her to preserve his genes and use them for future breeding. Gaius Helen Mohiam introduced herself as Tanidia Nerys during the conception, and therefore her daughter carried that surname before marriage. She was Jessica Nerys. The Bene Gesserit order raised Jessica and trained her in many of its most powerful practices. Thus, Jessica possessed almost superhuman abilities. She mastered a special fighting art, making her an incredibly strong fighter. Later, she would teach this art to the Fremen, significantly enhancing their power, allowing them to conquer numerous planets, destroying all dissenters. She mastered the voice, the ability to achieve the effect of instant hypnosis through intonation, making people do what she wanted. She had full control over the biochemical processes in her body. She could decide when she wanted to conceive and determine the gender of her child, could neutralize poison within herself, and more. After completing her training, Jessica finally received an important assignment from the Order. She was to become the concubine of Duke Leto Atreides, bear him a daughter, who in turn would have a child by Feyd Rautha Harkonnen. This child, Jessica's grandchild, was meant to become the Kwisatz Haderach, the one who not only possessed the genetic memory of all male and female ancestors, but could also see into the future. However, things ultimately turned out differently. By the time Duke Leto Atreides met Lady Jessica, he had already been married and even had a child, his son, Victor Atreides. However, that marriage ended tragically. His wife and son plotted against him, but ended up perishing in their own conspiracy. Jessica felt the great sorrow the Duke experienced because of this. Against the plans of the Bene Gesserit, Jessica couldn't control her feelings and fell in love with him. To comfort her beloved, Jessica abandoned her order's plans and defied her sisters. Instead of a daughter, she gave birth to a son, Paul Atreides, the heir Duke Leto longed for. This act ultimately thwarted the Bene Gesserit's plans. The desired Kwisatz Haderach turned out to be Paul, who was beyond the Order's control. Despite their mutual love, Duke Leto never officially married Jessica. She remained his concubine by status. The reason was simple: politics. By staying unmarried, Leto remained open to a potential alliance with another great house, which could help the Atreides strengthen their power. Indeed, after some time, Leto decided to marry despite his relationship with Jessica. His bride was Ilessa Ikaz, the daughter of Archduke Armand, the head of the powerful house Ikaz. Jessica understood this event. She was well versed in politics and understood the expediency of such a union. Moreover, she even met Ilessa and hosted her on Caladan. However, right during the wedding, Ilessa was killed in an assassination orchestrated by House Moritani, longtime enemies of House Ikaz. In the end, Jessica remained the main and only woman in Duke Leto's life. Against the Order's rules, she taught many Bene Gesserit techniques to her son Paul. Thanks to his mother, Paul mastered the voice and became an exceptional fighter even before joining the Fremen. As Duke Leto's loyal companion, Jessica naturally followed him to Arrakis, the desert planet that the Emperor had given to the Atreides to govern. In reality, this decision was a trap for Leto. The Emperor, in collusion with Baron Harkonnen, wanted to destroy the Duke, seeing him as a threat to his power, and not without reason, it must be said. The Atreides' rule on Arrakis was short-lived. The plan orchestrated by Emperor Shaddam Corrino IV and Baron Vladimir Harkonnen worked. Duke Leto was killed, and the Atreides' forces were crushed. Lady Jessica, along with her son Paul, managed to escape into the desert against all odds. It was assumed that they wouldn't survive there, especially since Lady Jessica was already pregnant with the Duke's child. However, things turned out differently. Upon finding herself among the Fremen, a society of religious fanatics obsessed with ideas of messianism and holy war, Lady Jessica quickly realized that their beliefs were part of a special Bene Gesserit program. Sisters of the Order had, for centuries, sent missionaries to various primitive worlds, instilling the beliefs needed by the Order using their superhuman abilities, thus preparing these worlds for the arrival of the Messiah, the Kwisatz Haderach. These missionaries had visited Arrakis long ago, and their mission had been successful because the Fremen lived only with the dream of the coming of the Chosen One, who would lead them into a bright future. This had been foretold in their legends, and Jessica realized that she and her son matched the prophecy perfectly. The Fremen of Arrakis were inspired by Jessica's arrival for two reasons. First, their own revered mother, Ramallo, was old and near death. With her training from Ramallo, Jessica became an ideal candidate to replace her. Second, their prophecy stated that Mahdi, their Messiah, was to be born of a Bene Gesserit and a reverend mother. To confirm the prophecy and ensure her son would receive the Fremen's devotion and loyalty, Lady Jessica chose to take on this role. She was aware of the terrible risks and consequences of becoming a full reverend mother, but still agreed to it. According to the Fremen ritual, Jessica ingested the toxic liquid of a young sandworm to obtain the water of life and unlock her connection with all previous Reverend Mothers. This act not only elevated her to the status of Reverend Mother, but fundamentally altered the unborn child she was carrying, causing abomination in her unborn daughter Alia. As a result, Alia gained access to the memories of her ancestors while still in the womb, without having a fully developed individual personality, something that led to significant problems in the years to come. For now, however, Lady Jessica, having become the Fremen's Reverend Mother, one of the highest titles in their society, played a decisive role in uniting the desert people. It was Jessica, along with Stilgar, who traveled to various tribes and sieges, convincing the Fremen that her son was the prophesied Mahdi, who would lead them toward freedom and greatness. And she succeeded. Jessica helped Paul Atreides become the leader of the Fremen, enabling him to overthrow the Harkonnens' rule on Arrakis and lure the Emperor into a trap, forcing him to hand power over to the Atreides. Paul Atreides became the Emperor, and as the Kwisatz Haderach, gained limitless power. However, it soon became apparent that Paul's methods raised significant concerns for Lady Jessica. After her son conquered House Corrino and House Harkonnen to become Emperor, Jessica stayed on Arrakis for a year. She accompanied Emperor Muad'Dib on his first official state visit to Caladan, their home planet. When a courier arrived in Caladan's capital with news that the Fremen warriors had captured Kaitain, Paul appointed his mother as the Duchess and ruler of the water planet and left to deal with the issue himself. Jessica was happy to take up this position. She had always loved Caladan, a beautiful world with unspoiled nature. Gurney Halleck also joined her on Caladan, helping her govern. Jessica and Gurney ruled the planet with unwavering fairness. She especially enjoyed participating in the local celebrations in the city of Kala during the changing of seasons. Sometime later, Paul asked his mother to accompany Chani Kynes and Irulan Corrino on a mission to the home planet of the exiled House Corrino. Salusa Secundus, to observe the progress of the terraforming of that planet. On Salusa Secundus, the former Padisha Emperor Shaddam Carino IV and his aide, Hasimir Fenring, welcomed Jessica's entourage and invited them to an official dinner. During the dinner, Fenring complained to Lady Jessica about her son Paul's excessive cruelty, mentioning that Paul destroyed entire worlds if they refused to recognize his authority. It was then that Jessica began to worry about her son's behavior. Years passed, and Muad'Dib's jihad reached its peak. Jessica started to doubt her son's sanity, wondering if he had become an abomination, meaning he might be possessed by the personalities of one of his ancestors and no longer in control of himself. Seeking advice, she went to the planet Wallach 9, the seat of the Bene Gesserit order to which she once belonged. There she was approached by Gaius Helen Mohiam and Reverend Mother Harishka, who offered Jessica the position of Reverend Mother Superior of the entire Bene Gesserit order if she would kill her son Paul. Reflecting on all the human suffering caused by Paul Atreides, Jessica internally agreed that Paul had indeed become the most brutal ruler in human history. And although the thought of killing her own son tore her apart, Jessica couldn't get it out of her mind. Soon after, Paul met with his mother, foreseeing her thoughts and intentions. He explained to Jessica that he had to destroy all these worlds because the people who looked up to him as a kind of messiah needed to learn what tyranny false messianic hopes could create. After witnessing his atrocities, humanity would never again believe in the salvation brought by one person. This was his plan. Upon learning all this, Jessica was forced to come to terms with it, realizing that Paul's actions were the lesser evil for the greater future of humanity. Meanwhile, Paul's enemies did not leave him in peace. Another conspiracy led to Paul losing his sight, his powers, and ultimately wandering into the desert, where he was presumed dead. Immediately after Paul's supposed death, Jessica returned with Gurney to Arrakis, concerned for her grandchildren, Leto and Ghanima. She was also alarmed by the increasing cruelty her daughter Alia used to consolidate her power after Paul's death. Jessica watched with growing concern as Alia created a fanatical religious organization worshipping the Atreides family. Jessica was also worried that Alia banned all forms of dissent and executed Paul's childhood friend, Bronso of Vernius, for his writings. Eventually, Jessica returned to Caladan, deeply troubled about the fate of the Empire, suspecting that the abomination within her daughter Alia had grown stronger and that she was possessed by one of her ancestors, as it turned out, Vladimir Harkonnen. Long after Paul's supposed death, Jessica returned once again to Arrakis to examine his children, Leto II and Ghanima Atreides, hoping they were not abominations. However, during her mission, she discovered that her own daughter, Alia, who was acting as regent, was possessed by the late Vladimir Harkonnen, who was driving her to destroy the Atreides Empire out of revenge. Alia understood that her mother posed a direct threat to her, placing Jessica in danger. To protect her from her daughter, Duncan Idaho abducted Jessica and took her to Salusa Secundus, the home of the exiled House Carino. There, at the end of her life, Jessica trained Faradan Corino in the ways of the Bene Gesserit, unwittingly preparing him for the role of Ghanima's husband and royal scribe to her grandson Leto II. It is likely that it was on Salusa Secundus where Jessica ended her life, leaving behind a great legacy. And that's all for today. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like it, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell icon. Your support is the best reward for me. Thank you for watching. See you soon. Bye.